Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to our program today. My name is Heather Law, and I'm the Director of Alumni Career Services here at Tuck, and we are so excited to have you with us today. Before we dive into our exciting topic, I just want to say that I hope everyone is healthy, well, and safe these days, and we hope that our conversation today can provide you with interesting insights and a sense of virtual connection. I also want to start off by saying a huge thanks to our partners. This event is brought to you not only by Tuck Alumni Engagement, but Tuck Career Services and the Center for Digital Studies. A big shout out to Laura and Patrick. Thank you so much for being partners for us and with us on this event that we are so happy to be bringing to you today. So through these types of events, we are always aiming to provide thought-provoking, lifelong learning opportunities that are led by Tuck alumni, faculty, staff, and community members to encourage the sharing of knowledge and conversation on current topics, professional development, and school updates. So we invite you to put any questions that you might have in the Q&A box. We also encourage you to be interactive. Please feel free to put some things in the chat. If you have any questions or if you have any concerns, please let us know. Also, it's really helpful to give us a little bit of context. So if you do have a question, please feel free to put what year you are. So for example, I'm a Tuck 05 and I'm wondering, or I'm a current student and I have a question about blank. It just helps give us a little bit of context. So today we are so excited to have you here. While I continue on with the introductions, we'd love for you to put in the chat if you are a Tuck graduate, what year did you graduate? And also, no matter if you're a Tuckie or not, where are you located right now? And so we can just see where everyone is hailing from and the variety of people we have joining us today. So we are all here to talk about the future of tech industry workforce trends. We are so honored to be joined by two Tuck alumni. Unfortunately, Kate was not able to join us today, and she sends her apologies, but grateful that we can have Justine and Jacques-Philippe joining us today. And so I'm going to do a brief introduction of both Justine and Jacques-Philippe, and then we'll get the conversation started. We also want to thank everyone who submitted questions ahead of time. You will find that we're going to incorporate those questions throughout, and then we'll have the last 15 minutes to answer any questions that we didn't get a chance to. We know there's going to be a lot of questions, so we may not get to everything, but hopefully this is going to be a really engaging and fun conversation. Thank you for those of you who are putting in your locations. Great. We have a T’19 from Seattle. We have Boston. We have some really great alums and students joining us. So we're so happy. Hanover, great. Current student, fantastic. So I first would like to welcome Justine Modot. She is the Director of Business Strategy at Microsoft. She drives the go-to-market and sales excellence strategy at Microsoft, and her focus is to build growth for next generation of digital application services and developer tools. She started at Microsoft as an intern and joined full-time as a business planner after graduating from Tuck. And I apologize, she is a Senior Director of Business Strategy. And over the past 10 years, she has had an exciting career developing expertise in entrepreneurship, which many of us can appreciate, and growing businesses within Microsoft. Before business school, she worked as a consultant in Paris for several years in a management consulting boutique firm. And at Tuck, she was a CDS Fellow, Women in Business Co-Chair, and Wine Club Co-Chair. Justine, we're so happy to have you. Welcome, welcome.
Hi everyone. It's I was scrolling through the name. It's fun, some familiar names, so that's exciting and intimidating.
Yay, so great to see some friendly names. Okay, great. And Jacques-Philippe Piverger, I apologize if I didn't say that right. T’07 is the founder and chairman of Goodlight Capital. He's an experienced entrepreneur and investor who harnesses the power of business and philanthropy to affect change where it's needed most around the world. Prior to founding Goodlight Capital, he was a co-founder and managing partner at Ozone X Ventures. And before that, he was a director at Pine Bridge Investment investment in AIG Investments, where he participated in directing over 10 billion of venture capital, private equity, hedge fund, and real estate transactions globally. He has a lot of expertise, especially sort of when it comes to the future of work and the venture space that we're going to get to today. And he holds a bachelor's degree from Georgetown and an MBA from Tuck. And then I also just want to remind all of our audience members who are Tuck alumni, again, this is only open to Tuck alumni, but on Thursday, we're going to have a Tuck networking together that we run each month that is focused on tech. And we're actually going to be discussing some of the insights from this program with each other and with fellow alumni that are interested in the tech industry. So thank you again, Justine and Jacques-Philippe, for joining us today. We are beyond excited and happy to have you here. So I know I gave a background, but tell us a little bit about your experience and your industry knowledge and expertise. Where did that come from? Justine, I'd love to start with you. Tell us a little bit about you.
I would actually reflect, I ran into one of my friends who also joined same time as me right after the MBA. And for full context, it was when we had just launched Windows 8, and so many of my classmates asked me, "Are you sure you want to go work for Microsoft?" So it was an interesting moment in time, and I was reflecting with that friend, and she was like, "Well, do you believe it's been 10 years?" And I'm like, "No, it went by so fast." And at the same time, I don't think I would want to be anywhere else in the world today. Like over the past 10 years, the speed at which we've innovated, and not only Azure got you, it was nascent 10 years ago. Now it's like into one of these market leading position. Modern work went through that huge transformation where we are completely renovating in terms of how people work and hybrid work in teams. And then I get to be part of that AI journey in building applications. So it's constant learning and renewal in a company that has completely changed their mindset in terms of like growth mindset and learning and doing and failing. And also has a very strong culture, because during that same time, personally, I grew as a person, I grew my family. And I'm like, there are only a few places in the world where I would get to like learn, address so many challenges, fail, learn some more, and also have the chance to be present for my family. So
I love that. Thank you so much. Jacques-Philippe, share a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Thank you, Heather. It's great to be here. Time with Tuckies is always time well spent.
Oh. Jacques-Philippe, did we lose you? He's keeping us on the edge. Okay, well, Justine, you can hear me, right?
Yeah, okay. I think he's back.
Oh, I don't think so yet.
For in-person.
Jacques-Philippe, can you hear us now?
You fine. If necessary, maybe I'll go out and come back in.
I think we have you now. Why don't you try that again? We apologize, everyone. We did do a couple tech checks, but you never know how it's going to go.
My apologies. You think I didn't live in New York, but we'll do. Look, great to be here. Time with Tuckies. I know Justine mentioned being out of Tuck for 10 years. I'm not going to say how long I've been out, but it's shocking how quick the time flies. On my end, I've worn a few hats, right? Post-Tuck, I was at AIG Investments across the private asset classes. During the Great Recession, we spun out with the third-party assets, about 100 billion, created PineBridge. With respect to the AIG bit, for what it's worth, one of the reasons I went there is I figured, things were frothy, could go south. Let me go somewhere big where when things start to go south, we'll do well. But I didn't anticipate that AIG would be at the heart of it. So you never know. You can never plan fully. I've also helped build and scale a number of enterprises. I was a co-founder and CEO of a solar product company that went from concept to market distribution in more than 70 countries during my tenure. I've also helped create various nonprofits, and now running Goodlight Capital, where we're leveraging big data and tech as well as collective expertise in order to help unearth and find kind of the companies of the future and really bring venture into the future. So I think part of what you'll see here as well is hopefully a fun interplay between Justine, who's in the heart of all things generative AI right now, and with us at Goodlight in terms of what's next in venture and how we're looking at things and applying tech and data in order to reinvent the way that we source, evaluate, and support companies. And again, I'm just happy to be here, and hopefully Wi-Fi will cooperate with us.
Well, that's why we knew the two of you would be just so perfect for this. So let's start with, as we all know, the last 2.5 years have seen a lot of technological transformations, right? In the workplace, I mean, the rise of remote work, widespread adoption of AI tools. What gets you most excited about these technological shifts? Justine, let's start with you.
I have to say I'll try to just think about where I want to start on this one, but I'll start really about the way you can get better at like bringing your whole self to work. And I'll elaborate a little, because now you have the flexibility in how you're managing your time, and you can gain tons of efficiency with some of the addition tools that we have coming. I think you've given more than ever really the opportunity to like live a personal, extremely fulfilling life, but also exceed in a career and draw pretty hard boundaries. And when I say that, I'm also very aware that Microsoft might have a very unique point of view on that perspective, and that it's not like shared widely. I have a lot of my friends in Seattle who've had to started resuming back to work and going back to the office, which has been more difficult for them. But it's been really interesting to see how people like change completely the way they work, and like the friction that there is to go back to the old way. And when the next wave that is coming is going to be even more fascinating. I'm lucky enough to be able to play with the Microsoft 365 Copilot that you might have seen that we've been announced. And that thing on like things like starting an email, getting like your Word doc getting ready. I'm gaining so much time in my daily life on things that were, like my after mom shift, when I was going back home, usually I full day of meeting, and then I stop working between 5 and 8. I take care of my kids. That's like my hard focus time that I'm not moving. And then I catch up on email in the evening and, do some focus time. But that time that I was spending like maybe an hour or two before, now that I use AI, like I might be able to only get away with 30 minutes of it. So that's, so I think we have another additional tool to be even more free to really balance your work and your life.
I love it. Jacques-Philippe, how about you? What gets you excited about these technological transformations over the last couple of years?
Yeah, sure. No, thanks for the question. I think Justine did a good job of capturing a few of those, right? So a couple of years ago, we were forced to leave the workforce, and the fact that we had some of these tools, I don't think we realized how important or transformative they could be, right? Zoom and Meet and everything became critical to all that we were doing. And so it was good to have them. We were forced to do so. But then, in recent months, the last year and a half, as people have started to move back, I think part of what's exciting is that the technology is meeting us where we are, right? So there's certain people, especially those who've been working for a long time, they like being in the office, right? And so they're going to use it in a certain way. And then you have others who, grew up using the technology, and this is what they're used to, and they want to continue doing so. And then there are people meeting in the middle. And I think Justine also hit upon, if you're a stay-at-home mom, historically, you might be cut out from the workforce, forever, whereas now you can still participate in a meaningful way. Same thing internationally, right? So you can be in a low-cost environment in Asia or Africa or Latin America, but if you have skills, you can be working fully with any firm anywhere. And I think that's a really big deal. And then the other, which is kind of an intangible that we tend to overlook, is just understanding that there's flexibility and having more agency about how we work, where we work, and how we get things done. And I think that's one of the exciting things about the last couple of years, that we're realizing that we can curate what that looks like. And then, lastly, for me, I'm excited about the applications of a lot of this tech in terms of solving significant challenges, because we have so many more tools, and I know we'll get into that a bit later.
That's really interesting. You brought up this sort of juxtaposition of Justine, the old ways versus the new ways. And now there's this push for this hybrid way of going back to work, right? We're a couple of days in the office, a couple of days not. I mean, do you see that staying? Do you envision that this is going to continue? I also want to be aware that the US perspective is also different from the global perspective of trends that we're seeing there too. So both of you, what are your thoughts on sort of that contradiction almost?
I think it's been interesting for us, like especially last year, the conversation, and I was still working on Viva, which is our employee well-being platform. And the conversation with customer completely changed. We went from how do we empower people? How do we make them more productive? How do we make them like, you know, really enjoying work and how do we acquire talent? And there was all of this like really hard competition for talent in the job market. And that switch, and the next day we've had some customer who went back or were like, no, I need AI, I need efficiency, and I need to get like everyone back in the office. And it was really hard for us to, not follow the customers down that road, because like long term, you still need to really think about AI as something that's going to be supplementative to the workforce. And it's still very much aligned to this idea that like you need to get a workforce that is more productive, but also through the well-being. And so we've been working really hard to like reposition, and I think in the US we've seen the backlash a little bit stronger than other geos, where in Europe, where because of regulation, remote work took a little bit more time to be adopted, they're not kind of like reverting back to some of these. So we're probably going to end into really a hybrid type of model that we're going to get through. And that's going to be exciting, but I'm looking forward to see kind of like how widely adopted some of these products are getting. And it's been interesting, seeing our customer really jumping on AI and now being like, okay, now what do we do? Where do we start? And now everyone kind of like in that stage. And so we're having fascinating conversation with everyone. And there is that focus on what is the big thing that can be disrupted. And sometimes people tend to overlook what are the small things that can be improved, and that the accumulation of these small things that AI can improve is the most likely to have the biggest impact short term. So.
Absolutely. Jacques-Philippe, globally, nationally, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the genie's out of the bottle. We can't go back, and you're seeing a lot more usage of the tech, right? So if we think of, ourselves from the Goodlight perspective, one of our key customers, if you will, are the founders of companies. We're not a company that's focused on backing companies that use AI and big data. But when I look at the dozen companies we invested in the last couple of years, half of them are doing so, right? And they're doing so to solve for consequential challenges like wildfire prevention, it's breast cancer, it's drone technology to repair utility water lines, leveraging big data. So I think part of what's exciting is how the tools are being used. I think oftentimes too much attention is placed on the tool and not on the utilization. I mean, the reality is tech is tech. We don't invest in tech companies. We invest in companies that use tech. And I think often there's confusion there. What excites me is when tech, whether it's generative AI or the Copilot or whatever else, when it's used to do things that are complementary to our general human evolution, then that's super exciting. And we are being incredibly empowered by some of these tools to be able to move from a place where we'd have to do 1 to 100, all the steps. Now there are these tools that can do kind of 1 to 90 for us, and we can focus on some high level aspects of it. So then we're able to solve for some of these problems more effectively, collaboratively. And, that is what's particularly exciting to me, and, hopefully for others as well.
tools do you see that are being most used right now? I mean, we were just laughing about how on LinkedIn now they even have, when you're going to put a post, it says, would you like to create this with generative AI before I'm even going to post anything? So, I mean, it's really hitting all aspects of our lives, right? So are there any tools in particular that either you're using in your personal and professional lives, or, you know, maybe themes that you're seeing of the types of tools?
I think for us, what is interesting, so I probably get to play with more of the AI tool than a lot of folks, which is awesome. And it's been interesting. And like the generative AI is really helpful for content creation, but actually not that much, because it's always missing some insights, color, subtleties that you don't have. It's been helpful for me where I needed to write a communication, and it was between Satya and another leader. And I actually used generative AI to say, can you write me a communication in the tone of Satya and that leader? And then I presented my kind of like writing outputs, and then the feedback was like, oh, it's great, it's capturing both of their tones so well. And I was that was really mind-blowing. So it does like really well. So these are some of the stuff that I like to play with, like the tone. But I think where people underestimate the strength is in terms of how much it's going to revolutionize learning and knowledge mining. I took on a new job about a month ago. I've spent all of my life in modern work. I like tech, but I'm not like a tech person per se. And now I have to go and build strategy to go sell pretty technical product around like app services and containers and tool developer and developer for tools for developers. I mean, I literally had to watch YouTube video to know what a Kubernetes was only a couple months ago, but like being able to have this like assistant that compile all of the meetings that I have, like help me rationalize all of the learning, being able to go into detail. Hey, can you explain me the difference with this or that? Or when I'm in meeting, I actually have my Copilot open with me and like, you know, being able to kind of like get there. And so I think this learning scenario is where we're seeing a lot of interest, and one that makes sense and is so valuable because content management and just like content sharing and knowledge sharing are key elements that are going to be even more strategic in the context of the future of work. Because if you think about a way where knowledge management happened a lot was also in-person exchange, informal conversation, some of these connections. And if you don't have that, how do you also help people access the information in a more kind of like self-initiated way? So I would say, yes, all of the creative is fun. Like I found the most value in all of the learning and getting access to the information.
Yeah, I haven't graduated to the Copilot yet. I have to stay close to Justine to get that access. But the Chat GPT, you know, definitely has changed things personally, especially with respect to the creation of content. Whereas historically, I might have not only had to put more time to develop it myself, but also with the team and as far as things are being developed. I found many more gaps historically, whereas now, you know, the first draft has a lot of data, has a lot of research, it has all the different parts. The outlines are more robust, so it's definitely saving us a lot of time, and that's amazing. And I'd imagine as we start to integrate, you know, Copilot and others, it'll only get better. And then from our vantage point, it's also in terms of how we support our portfolio companies and having more time and opportunity to do that in a fulsome manner and having access to far more information in a usable manner and more quickly. And that's pretty exciting, and you know, not only well received by us, but by also the companies that we're looking to support. And so, yeah, I anticipate that's only going to get better.
You know, this really impacts the future of work in the sense of there's been a lot of shifts and transformations, right, for throughout the workforce, especially I'm sure early and mid-career, you know, alumni or people. But how do you see sort of the generative AI and some of these tools affecting positions? Like I'm thinking like marketing, for example. You know, a lot of marketers might be using generative AI for their messaging, or, writing copy and things like that. So do you feel like this is going to affect all positions, like marketing or functions, I should say, maybe like finance or operations? And how should a soon-to-be graduate, recent graduate, mid-career professional be thinking about their careers, because it's ever changing?
I would say that the soft skill that you're learning will make the difference. The way we see it, and especially in terms of like content generation, it's taking away the busy work more than taking away the core work. I'm at Microsoft, but I'm sure in plenty of other companies, the number of hours we spent getting a messaging and words right for a message to land a certain way because of the way it's going to be heard, or like the audience or context. Like, I think it would be really hard for any AI to get to that level in the short term. And so there is still room, but then it's really that busy work, getting an email started that you have to, making sure that you're on top of your inbox and like getting a summary of what was there. So I think it's helping more than really disrupting. Then I would say for jobs where like knowledge mining was more important, if you think especially in low or that type of like text heavy, regulation heavy, that's probably where you would have more of the disruption. But then once again, it's not so much of the content generation unless it's like very templatized content. It is about knowledge mining. Whether you build a contract, for example, it's really much about, hey, what have been done in the past? What are some of the terms? What are the exceptions? So you kind of like go back to that knowledge mining of like standard framework that you would want to use. Even if you think about healthcare, being able to help with diagnosis, being able to do analytics at scales and related to some, hey, what were the findings from that? And so being able to accelerate that knowledge mining. And so sure, there will be some disruption from a creative perspective, but there is still a lot of room. I do see the disruption happening much faster in terms of automatization and kind of like learning and documentation. So.
Yeah, similarly, I would agree. I think the functions haven't changed, right? You still need operations, you still need marketing, you still need finance, you still need HR, you still need sales. And these are just tools that will hopefully enhance the capabilities of managers in those functions to do those jobs better. And I think that's pretty exciting. And to Justine's point, the things that are being enabled are typically a lot of the things that people didn't necessarily enjoy doing in the first place. And so in many ways that makes it better. I'm sure that's not 100% the case, but most people I know, think of it in that way. And, historically, it was kind of knowledge is power, and getting access to knowledge was a big deal. And I think we're moving to creativity is power. And so when I think of, someone coming out today, you want to keep your mind nimble, you want to be creative, you want to be able to think outside the box, you want to be able to manipulate the information, because the information now is a point of parity. That's the table stakes. Everyone has information. That's no longer a point of differentiation. So the next stage is, creativity is power. How creative, how nimble are you with respect to pulling together information, making it usable, and bringing, your team and your company forward. And I think that's going to be a big thing with respect to how people thrive or not, over this next period of time.
I think that was so well put. And I love the creativity is power, because there's parity now. And I was reading through Microsoft's work, a trend index that Justine had recommended that I read, and I recommend it for everyone, and sort of some of the themes. And one of them, Jacques-Philippe, you just sort of brought up, which is we sort of now know that everyone will need to have AI aptitude, right? It's sort of now in being a given that if you want to continue to have jobs or your job, you most likely are going to have to adapt in some way. This can be really intimidating for people who are, for people in general, right? And so What about people who have very little comfortability with AI or little experience with AI? How do you recommend people get those skills? Or is there any sort of place that they can go to sort of get those skills, resources? I mean, is crowdsourcing the best? I mean, what are your thoughts there?
You could start by just asking simply the question to ChatGPT, is what I would say.
Good answer, Justine.
But I think this is what is fascinating, is that the real skill is asking questions. And even if you think about like prompt engineering and how things might evolve, like the real thing is about asking the right question. And you can make, I'm going to make a parallel that's kind of a crappy one, but kind of like, if you know how to make a pivot table, but you don't know what to look for, your pivot table skill is not very useful. You still have access to that information, but you need to know what to ask the data. It is very similar in the sense that you will need to learn how to ask the questions. And I don't think really, like sure, like there will be places about like AI skills are about like technical, but as we have and we've had for all technologies in the past, but I would say for any other profession, I actually think that it might be less disruptive than, for example, when people had to move from paper to PowerPoint or like to use Excel. And the interface are just like so much like nicer and easier to understand and to comprehend, because you just like ask question in natural language. So it's really about like, that's the whole point. So.
Great answer. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would essentially build on what Justine has just said, in that, I mean, think about it. If you studied computer science at the best institution in the world 30 years ago, you would still basically be starting from scratch right now unless you had kept up. And so we're at a place now where things are changing so quickly, in the last few years in particular with generative AI, that for those who are complete tech neophytes, have no experience in tech, it couldn't be easier to participate, and you're almost on the same level as people who have been doing tech forever. If anything, it's potentially more disorienting for someone who spent like a whole career as a coder and doing tech. And now a lot of the things, like literally, you can now get 90 to 95% of the code using, this type of software. And so if you've been a coder for a long time, it's potentially more disorienting than the reverse, right? You're an MBA, you're doing finance, you're doing this, you're doing the other. Now you have a glide path to be a techie using natural language and asking simple questions. And you're like 90 to 95% there relative to people who literally spent a lifetime studying this stuff. And if they haven't kept up in the last 5 years, all the stuff that they learn is somewhat irrelevant. So I also think this is a great opportunity for people who up to this point didn't participate much. They didn't think of themselves as being, inclined towards coding, or for whatever reason, now is an entry point, which is a lot more accessible. And so, I would just suggest that, people try it out. As Justine said, use ChatGPT as a starting point.
I'll use an example, because what you said just resonated. As part of my charter, one of the things that we discuss a lot with customers is like that often shows up is like, how do you migrate or modernize a mainframe app? Mainframe app is like super old app. Usually we've even lost like the code. We don't even know what it said. Like we just know that it's like still working and we shouldn't touch it or we're going to be in big trouble. And I kind of like, when there was like, well, if you're about to really describe well what the app is doing and all of the intricacies of it, and even like run like and analyze the code, like could generative AI kind of like help you do the work instead of like actually spending human hours trying to untoggle the bag of node. And it is so interesting because like the first answer from very experienced seller or like DRC are like, oh, no, it's too complex. It's never going to be possible. And then you turn around and I already have 3 partners who've developed solutions who do exactly that. And so to your point, like, I think the expertise and even, you know, we're talking about Copilot for GitHub and some of the adoption with developers, and we're trying to be extremely careful because you want to make sure that people don't feel like they're disrupting their own space. And technology is one of the industry that is the most likely to be disrupted the earliest by AI. So it's going to be an interesting conundrum because people in the know are going to need to see if they disrupt themselves or not. So
that's such an interesting, just a dichotomy. I think that's really important. Jacques-Philippe, did you want to add something before I ask another question?
No, you can go for it.
Well, one thing that kind of reminded me of a little bit, Justine, is that we've never had more technology, right, at our fingertips. And that this can also lead people to feeling the opposite of like, I don't know what I'm doing, but more on the overwhelmed or burnt out perspective, right? Do you see that, you know, among your peers, but also how do you see it affecting workers? And could this sort of technology be used to help be a solution for burnout too? I just want to bring in that sort of mental health piece as well.
I'm trying to think about how I answer this one. I mean, yes, it can probably help, but at the same time, it's a different type of like information overload. Like it has risk in sense of if you create more content more easily, like you add noise, and so that doesn't help with your work-life balance. And then how do you even follow up on actions? Like for example, right now, I have notes taken from all of my meeting automatically, and kind of like follow-up tasks are like done automatically. I think we're probably like a couple, I don't know, times away or seconds away from being able to have these tasks and track to me because I said in a meeting I was going to do them. So I think there will be a lot of like, okay, I need to take a step back and clean up. And so at least in the short term, it's probably going to add more noise, if not like used properly. So I could see people being overwhelmed. I don't know how it will impact mental health that much. There's a lot of insecurity that we're seeing for sure. That being said, it's also a tremendous opportunity for in terms of inclusivity for anyone with a disability. Whether it's like people who've had dysgraphia who are more comfortable with speech, like you can think about a lot of like visible and non-visible disabilities that will be where the playing field is going to be leveled with AI and access to AI. So.
Jacques-Philippe, anything you want to add there?
Sure, 1 second. What are my thoughts on some of the challenges and opportunities? So, well, challenges and productivity and how it helps or hinders, but more so hinder. So, look, as I mentioned earlier, these are tools, and it's up to us to figure out how to use it. My guess, if I had to look at my crystal ball, is that it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better, because I think we're confusing the generative AI as an actual solution unto itself, right? So we're like using it. I think there's zero debate that we're more productive using it, right? Like in X units of time, we can accomplish far more by using generative AI. The issue is that we're constantly on this wheel, right? Hamster wheel, looking to accomplish more and more and compete with the next person. And by the way, they also have access to the same tool. And so that's where the issue comes. And I suspect that's not changing anytime soon. I put 2 links, one to our site, Goodlight Capital, but also the Mindful. I've been a lifelong martial artist and yoga, meditation, all that kind of stuff. And typically those types of things are not incorporated into conversations about business. But if you're talking about wellness and health and avoiding burnout, it's important that people really go in and assess what's actually important for them in their lives and use the tools in a way that's aligned with those actual objectives. Because I think more often than not, we just go. We go because, Justine and Heather are doing it and Jacques-Philippe's doing X, and we think it's a competition relative to others, whereas our actions and activities should actually be aligned with our purpose. And so spending more time going in is what's going to be required to avoid burnout and all this type of stuff. And until the conversation at least includes that aspect of our human reality, it's gonna, we're gonna get more and more. So having this it makes things easier, but then we're just doing more of it. and so I anticipate that you'll be seeing more and more burnout. And that's what you're seeing when you look at the data. Mental health and stress and a lot of these things, they haven't gone down, and tech has been getting better for every year that we've been alive, right? So there isn't a correlation between increased efficiency and there isn't a negative correlation between increased efficiency and mental health and decreased stress and all that kind of stuff. And that's on us. That's not on the tech, in my opinion.
I fully agree. Like I was gonna get it's what we were saying about it's going to be about creativity. If you're not able to like set the line right now to create that space for yourself to take a step back and think, like there is no tech that's going to like use it. We've tried, like we have that thing for us that's called focus time. I have focus time block on my calendar automatically. It's not often ending up in focus time. It's often repurposed, but I try. But you need to set up your hard limit. If you were mentioning the work trend index earlier, and I think on the blog we have a note from Jared Spatero, who is our head of marketing for Modern Work and Biz Apps, and he talks about how his day is segmented and there is only so many hours a day he actually spends on work, and he's really hardcore on his limits, and that's something that a lot of the folks in the leadership at Microsoft do, and it is empowered to be emulated. But it's interesting how many people I see who are hesitant to put this limit. But to the point you were making, Jacques-Philippe, if you're the only person and we are the only person who can set our limits in terms of like setting up that time. And it's not like something that tech will solve.
It's also a culture shift too, because I think before multitasking was really sort of honored, right, in society, but almost this is sort of us saying that maybe it's focused time that's more valuable. I mean, there's been studies done that it's less productive, while you're multitasking. And so Justine, that example you gave is a little bit, to that point, which I think is great. This is so great. I have so many questions, but I want to make sure we open it up to our audience. We already have a bunch coming in, so thank you. They love it, and they love sort of all of these great takeaways, including about, creativity is power and having more agency, spending time going in before going out. So this is great. So we have a couple of questions. One is from a Tuck alum that says, I'm a very tactical person. I still take notes with a pen and paper, which is slower than needs to be digitized. Curious about suggestions on ways of working when AI isn't necessarily your natural way to work. And I'd like to say, like, is it any of ours natural way to work? Because we probably all aren't.
I think the good thing in that case is that it would be both. Like, I mean, when I take notes, it's for me to process what I'm hearing and organize and help me digest. And nothing prevents you to have the meeting recorded and the automated note at the same time and then edit them. Like, it's like, to the point, it's complementary. Like, you don't have to type it back. You just have a draft that's probably going to be already 80% similar to what you wrote down, and you're just going to reorchestrate it. And so what would have taken you like 20 minutes is going to take you 2 minutes to go and send follow-ups.
Yeah, I agree. And my suggestion is just to try things out as much as possible, because you never know. To Heather's point, most likely we all started off with only writing pencils and then pens and everything else. I know on my end, in the last few years, I started using more audio as opposed to just reading the books, and I found that works really well. And so my suggestion is to test different ways of inputting and accessing data, and just use the ones that work for you. There's no hard, fast rule for anyone.
And not being afraid to try it. I think, right, it can be intimidating. So it's like just trying it and not being afraid to do it. And what's interesting, Justine, in that Microsoft Work Trend Index, the report mentions that people are more hopeful that AI will lessen their workloads, right? And rather than replace their jobs, but also sort of help them. And so maybe we try to look at it as, an aid rather than a scary kind of negative thing.
The point that you were making, on double tasking, and like when we say it's the busy work, I think we mean it. A lot of our time today is spent in human exchange in meetings. And if you're able to, the reason why you would double task is because you have all of that busy work to do at the same time, because usually that's what you do when you're double tasking. And so if you're able to not spend as much time, then you have more time to focus on others or focus on what, like, deeply your strategy, or free up time. Like, as I said, like, I hope that we've been seeing that trend of like the third peak of productivity, which is like after dinner productivity. And like, that's one that I hope like would potentially see going down in terms of like how long it takes people to do that like busy work in the evening. So
yeah. The other thing too, that's been a big theme, I mean, especially in my work, but that I've been seeing for a lot of Tuckies, is it's a really tough job market right now, right? And so people are really affected by job loss, and wondering your thoughts on the future of sort of, I don't know if you feel like that it has affected your companies, but any advice for people who are sort of you know, on the job search right now, and how either it is going to look in the future, or any tech and tools that can be helpful in that.
Well, from my perspective, the job market is going to follow the general economic conditions, right? So people are still figuring it out. There's a lot of lack of clarity, and the prognosis literally spans the full gamut. There's some that think we're about to turn the corner and everything's positive and the job numbers are good, et cetera. And then there are others where this is the beginning of a long downturn and we need to be ready. But what I believe with certainty is that those in the job market who are positioning themselves to be most relevant in the current environment are going to do better, right? So they're going to get the initial jobs as they become available. And again, this is kind of a unique point in time where lots of people will claim to be expert, but no one really is, right? Like literally, Justine's talking about Copilot. She's used it because she works for the company. I haven't used it yet. Maybe I'll use it next week. There are going to be people out there that are claiming to be expert on Copilot, but no one is. And so people in the job market have a unique opportunity to set themselves up. Like I can think back to when social media was becoming the thing. And I could think of one buddy, he positioned himself as the social media king, right? And then he ended up partnering with a big news company and he wrote his ticket. He's done very well over the last 15 years because he was the expert. But the reality is anyone could have been the expert because no one knew. And so I think it's important to think outside the box, really define what it is that you're looking to do and where your existing experiences meet the opportunities that are out there. And then to what we said earlier, don't be afraid of leaning into some of this new tech because it's very accessible. And then you become far more attractive to the hires, right? You already have those skills that you had before, and now you become one of the handful of experts in this new domain. And just by having the audacity to say you're an expert goes a long way. And I'm not sure, what I would also say on that is I think it's important for everyone to lean into that inner confidence. And so the data typically shows that underrepresented folks, so women, Black, Hispanic, marginalized communities tend to take less risk and be less audacious and think that they need more skills versus majority individuals are always willing to say, I know, and I'm an expert. So, a comment for, all those people, which actually represents 70% or more of the population, which is a large part of what we focus on at Goodlight, is be more audacious, like lean into that, and you'll be rewarded for doing so, obviously within reason.
And I would say the thing that I would add to what you're saying is that you didn't come to Tuck to learn about core marketing or like core finance. You came to like learn leadership skill and strategic thinking skill. And that's what people are going to value. And so right now is really, and you don't need any classes or anything to like start a project with Copilot and AI and say, hey, here's what I've done. I've learned something. And it's like, it can be ridiculous. I'll give you a super random example. My 8-year-old got into fishing this year. I grew up in Paris. I have never touched a fishing rod in my life. And well, GPT has helped us a lot trying to figure out how I help him catch his first fish and like what the hell are all of these words but these are things where like you can learn everything now. And I think being able to, to as you're looking for a job of like being able to showcase a story of like how you've learned something and how you are adaptable and how you can be creative and like not afraid of some of the change, I think can be very big differentiator as you think about having this conversation and also just playing with it will just like give you a perspective different, because if I look into like Microsoft and the type of profile we hire, we want people who have a point of view. We want people who have idea on how to fix problems and so are able to frame these problems. And literally like any person that we've hired out of MBA at Microsoft, you could sit them to Satya and they would tell them, here are the 2 or 3 things that I would go fix at Microsoft. And these are things where like you can get even more powerful or relevant in terms of like the context by using things like GPT or generative AI in general, just because like now information and knowledge is leveled everywhere. So just embrace that and differentiate yourself in your thinking, your creativity, your leadership skills.
Yeah, I mean, I would say 100% on what Justine just mentioned. My son just started high school. My daughter, who was kind of the class toddler when we started at Tuck, she just started college. And, there's a book I read some time ago called The Beginner's Handbook. And some of it's actually focused on learning from the behavior of children, which is partially what Justine spoke to as well. Right. So my kids, they've grown up learning on YouTube, like everything's available. And so I think many of us post MBA can actually learn from that creative flexibility and the curiosity that's in all of us. You just need to reconnect with that. But the data, the information is out there, and just be audacious. Get after it.
Yeah. My son's first prompt to GPT last spring was around April. So obviously it was like, can you give me a list of good April Fools for my parents? That was his first question. So they get creative. They're gonna pick it up. They're gonna pick it up so quickly.
Well, and what's so great is it's immediate, right? If you want it right then, like sometimes we'll be sitting at the dinner table and he asks a question that I have no idea about my son, and we'll just say, well, let's ask and find out. So I think that's great. Something else that you said, Justine, which Jacques-Philippe, you said this earlier, is all about sort of this equity now for knowledge that everyone can sort of access. What about people? So we got a couple questions on this, who have a background in something that is not tech, right? So this example is physics, but it could be academia, anything like that. What should I do in order to prepare for a transition to a tech career after leaving academia? And to me, it just seems like use the tools, right? Like I love how Jacques-Philippe, you said sort of be more audacious, like become the expert, for lack of better words, of no one's an expert. But anything else to sort of think about, I think we get in our heads of I'm not a tech person, so I can't work in tech.
I was not a tech person prior to ending up in tech. I've actually seen folks boxing themselves trying to compete from a tech perspective. When they hire from Tuck, they're not hiring tech person or engineer. If they want to hire engineer, they go to Carnegie Mellon and they just pick up who they want. If they hire from Tuck, they are looking for leaders, they're looking for learners, they're looking for team players. They're looking for people who have strategic thinking skills, business skills. And so that's your strength. And so the ability to also have learned from other market, other opportunity. Physics resonates with me. I'm a mechanical engineer by training. I like to model system, and somehow it works really well in business too. So like, don't let that block you. Like, I don't even consider myself as a marketing person, and I've spent way too much time in marketing. So I don't know, like, it's just like ask questions, solve problems. That's literally the skills that will make you successful. So,
right. You don't have to be put in a box in your own head, right?
No.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay, well, our last question is actually from the head of our Center for Digital Studies, Patrick Wheeler. Thank you for joining and being a partner on this. He has a great question about how can Tuck and similar schools change to adapt to the ways that AI alters business and the future of work. What can we be doing at Tuck in order to help our future leaders?
I mean, personally, I think, all right, go ahead, Justine.
No, go ahead. I think I was gonna just like summarize what I've said earlier. Like you need to learn to learn. Like I think that's gonna be the big differentiator. Like how do you use AI to learn more, to learn deeper, to learn in a more agile way, and to think out of the box on like topics that you might not have researched. So
Yeah. And look, what I would add, if I put on my Tuck hat, I'm pretty sure the point of parity, point of differentiation, I probably picked that up in a Tuck class 20 years ago. But look, I think the Tuck curriculum and way of being is still very relevant. I think Tuck has always been at the forefront. Like we created the MBA program. And so I think part of what we should do as Tuck and the administration is to continue to reinvent and decipher what is most relevant now, what do we keep and what do we change. I think a lot of what we've discussed here, whether it's around the AI and machine learning, I haven't followed so closely recently, but I know when it first started, all the schools were really scared and told students, especially undergrad, I'm not sure about grad, not to use it, etc. But that's kind of going against the grain. Whereas I know there are ways that we could use a lot of this stuff more fulsomely for teaching to go deeper. And so that when the students come out, they're even more prepared and more comfortable with the use of this tech. And then also just being a bit more fluid, because again, kind of going forward, it's about being able to use information and greater levels of uncertainty. And so being comfortable asking students to respond to things that they weren't able to prepare for. So like really going a little bit further with respect to creating, developing that extra skill that is required to thrive in the current environment. But generally speaking, I think Tuck does a very good job with a lot of this.
Well, I cannot thank you both enough. I feel like we could talk for hours about this. You've been so insightful, and I feel like you've given us so many great sound bites. I'm picturing t-shirts like "Need to learn to learn." I think creativity is power. I mean, I feel like we have all these slogans, right? Be more audacious. So I have so many takeaways over here, and so we could not be more appreciative. For those of you who are Tuck alumni and joined today, please plan to join us on Thursday for the Tuck Networking Together, where we're just going to have groups of people that talk about these insights that Justine and Jacques-Philippe have wonderfully given to us, amongst other Tuckies, because I just am so impressed and just honored that you were able to join us today. This was such a great conversation. So thank you both. Thank you to our entire audience, and we look forward to seeing you again in a future program.